Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the Belize 101 webinar. We would like to start right on time, but I will give everybody a couple more minutes to jump on. My name is Angie Stafford. I assist with sales and marketing here at ECI Development. We're excited to have you with us today. Before we get started, for those of you familiar with Zoom, if you want to go ahead to the Q&A section and let us know what part of the world you're joining us from. If you're new to using the Zoom platform, you should be able to find the Q&A section on your taskbar. Also, please note that if you have any questions or comments, you can enter them in the Q&A section. And then at the end of the webinar, we will answer as many questions as we can. If we can't get to all of your questions, we will have a property consultant reach out to you with any answers. So let's see, where are people from? We've got Donna from Littleton, North Carolina, Alan from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Let's see, Paul from Michigan. Christine from Naples, Florida. Oh, Brad from Canada, Winnipeg, Canada. Okay, so we're right at 2:01. I am going to go ahead and hand it over to our CEO and host, Mike Cobb.
Angie, thanks a lot. Good to be with everybody today. It's always nice to get on a webinar and talk about a country that's near and dear to my heart. The fact that Belize was the first country that we did any business in, going all the way back to 1994, a long time ago. In fact, one of the things we're going to talk about today is we're going to touch a little bit on banking and finances to, one of the reasons so many people are looking at Belize, many reasons. There are business reasons, lifestyle reasons, investment reasons, and banking is certainly one of them. And in fact, that's how I got my start. I went to Belize back in 1993 on vacation and started to see opportunities to serve folks who needed a mortgage, right? Because if you were from Canada, I heard somebody's from Winnipeg or from Naples, Florida, wherever. If you're from Canada, the United States, and you went to Belize and you wanted to buy a property, a condo or a home, and the banks up in the US and in Canada would certainly not lend money on a piece of collateral in Belize, and the banks in Belize wouldn't lend money to foreigners. And so there was this big hole in the marketplace. And so over the course of 93 and into early 94, we started to see the opportunities to provide financing to people who needed it. And that was actually our very first business. It was the Exotic Key Mortgage Corporation, formed in 1994. So that's 29 years ago now, hard to imagine. And a few years later, we ended up starting Exotic Key International, which is the development company. But what we're going to talk about today is Belize generally, and then we're going to drill it down to some specifics of why Ambergris Caye maybe, and really try to give you a flavor of where Belize has come over the last 30 years and why now really is a good time to look at the country as certainly an investment destination, a business destination, and quite probably for many folks on this call today, a lifestyle destination as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. If you haven't looked on the map, Belize is just south of Cancun, Mexico, Playa del Carmen, sort of the Mexican Riviera, as they call it. It's the same coastline. It's the same reef system. It's just not nearly as crowded or as bustling and hustling as Mexico is, just a few miles to the north. Airlift is easy. Miami's about an hour and 30, hour 40 minute. Houston, just under 2 hour time. Dallas, flights coming in from all over the United States, WestJet out of Canada, and then flights coming up from the south through Panama, connecting through to all of Latin America. So very central to the region and easy to get to. It's a fairly small country. It's about the size of Vermont or Massachusetts in the United States. It's got a very low population of about 360,000 folks. It's getting closer to 400 now. the thing about that is you've got a fairly small country, but you've also got a very, very small population. And so you don't have the population pressures that other countries have. You can see it borders the Caribbean. It's a Central American country, but it's in the Caribbean, and it speaks English. English is the official language. So for many people, it's an easy first step out of the United States into the region, into Central America, with the English speaking, easy access. And it really is an incredibly charming, beautiful place. What we find is people come down to visit, maybe they get off a cruise ship and they say to themselves, I really want to come back here. I want to come back and see Belize. I want to spend more time there. And just, we're going to look at some imagery. We're not going to spend a lot of time on some of this, but to give a real flavor of the country and why it's such a popular destination, why people keep returning over and over and over again to Belize. And I did. And a lot of the reasons are simply, Mother Nature and the gifts. You've got this tiny little country with the longest living barrier reef in the world. The Great Barrier Reef in Australia is bigger, but much of it has died off. The reef along the coastline of Belize is alive and vibrant. Mother Nature has been incredibly blessing to this country. And then just a few miles inland, you've got rainforest and cloud forest and jungle and all of the things that brings. So, the reef systems are absolutely spectacular. The jungles are magical, whether you're out exploring, going and seeing Mayan ruins, or one of my all-time favorite, truly top 10 coolest things I've ever done in my life. And I've done a lot of cool things, is inner tubing, like these folks are right here, inner tubing through caves. Right? I mean, literally, you jump in an inner tube and you float over a mile in one of the caves underground. You wear these little lights on your head, the miner's lights, right? It is an incredibly surreal experience. And these caves were used by the ancient Mayans as ceremonial sites. These were the entries to the underworld. And so you've got Mayan sites and incredible archaeological elements inside these caves, and you can stop and you climb up and you look at some really incredible Mayan civilization, and it's just spectacular. So if you go to Belize and all you do is go to the island, you're missing an incredible part of the country, like the cave tubing, like the Mayan ruins. But this one experience, can't say enough about it. Definitely one of the top 10 coolest things I've ever done in my life to this day. The Mayan ruins are spectacular. You can see some of them, going back 1,000 years, and the jungle has overtaken many of them, but they've come in and they've opened them up, and they're great museums alongside these Mayan ruins as well. So you really get a chance to understand the culture. And then, back in the 1400s, you had sort of the first European contacts, but the English came to what is now Belize early on for the mahogany trees. They were loggers. And so they came and they began to log out the mahogany. And that's why it became British as opposed to Spanish. And officially it sort of ended, the Spanish kind of attempt to own Belize ended in 1798 with the Battle of St. George's Key, where the British loggers, really the baymen of Belize, the loggers, were able to defeat the Spanish at the Battle of St. George's Key. Very, very diverse country, very diverse culture. You've got the Brits who came. You've got the Mayans who were there first. You've got the Garifuna. You've got the Guatemalans. You've got the Mexicans. You've got Hondurans. It's a very, very mixed culture, which is wonderful. The diversity is incredibly refreshing. And you just see that. Everybody gets along with everybody. And that's a wonderful, wonderful community to be a part of and to be with and involved in. Talk a little bit about the business reasons, and how they evolved, right? So it's the evolution of business that's really important. And you can see that Belize became an independent country in 1981. Prior to then, it was British Honduras, and it was an actual colony of England. It became part of the Commonwealth. Today, it is still part of the British Commonwealth. But this evolution. So in 1981, you have this little country in the Caribbean. Says, okay, now we're a country. We're Belize. What do? Well, we have agriculture, right? We have incredible tourism potential, but nobody's ever heard of the country, and nobody's really coming here. So what do? How do we build an industry? And what they did very smartly, very wisely, was they said, look, we're English speaking. We can look around to the other Commonwealth countries, the Cayman Islands, the British Virgin Islands, Turks and Caicos, the Bahamas, Bermuda, right? We can look at these other countries and we can see how they develop their financial services legislation. That would be for things like international business corporation, trusts, insurance legislation, banking legislation. And what they did very wisely is they just went around and they kind of cherry picked. Oh, we'll take the best from Bermuda for insurance, and we'll take the best from the Caymans for banking, and the best from maybe the British Virgin Islands for trusts and other things. And they kind of put together the best of this offshore legislation from all these other jurisdictions and came up with something very, very powerful and unique in the marketplace. And it served Belize very, very well. It is today an incredibly strong banking and financial services destination. And a lot of times people think, oh, it's offshore, it's whatever, it's scammers and stuff like that. But the regulatory system today is extremely tight. FATCA, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, FATCA, and that's got its tentacles everywhere. And so this idea of offshore money and we're hiding it and stuff like that, those days are largely gone. I'm not saying that they're completely gone, but they're largely gone. And so there are very solid business reasons to have an offshore business corporation, to have an asset protection trust, to have a bank account in a foreign country. And so the legitimate reasons behind these transactions are numerous. And Belize has become a very, very favored destination for all of these because of the very forward-looking legislation that they put into place beginning in the early 80s. The country is growing, the economy is growing, real estate is affordable. We'll talk about that. And then we're going to talk about banking specifically, and not so much for the banking side of it, but for the financing side of it and why that's important to the real estate industry. Key International Bank, I mentioned before that I got started in Belize with a little mortgage company. Well, Exotic Key Mortgage Corporation became Key Bank in 2003. So 20 years ago, our bank is now 20 years old. And full disclosure, I am on the board of directors. I'm on the management committee. And also one of the founders and shareholders of the bank. So that's full disclosure. So I do talk about the bank and what we do. But the business of the bank is very different from the business of the real estate. They're symbiotic, of course, but they're very, very different. And whether or not somebody decides to own a property with ECI or even own a property outside of Belize, say in Costa Rica or Panama or Honduras or Nicaragua, the bank can actually provide mortgage services outside of Belize throughout the Caribbean as well. So that's its own separate business. But the banking laws in Belize are very, very strong. And this is something that is really important to mention. We talk about bank failures and we talk about, FDIC insurance and the key behind all of that is liquidity. Like what part of a deposit, if somebody deposits $100, how much of that $100 has to stay liquid in a bank? Well, in the United States, the percentages are, 2, 3, 4%. The Basel Commission, which is the International Bank of Settlements, they recommend 6, 7% as sort of an industry standard. Most banks don't even hit that. Statutorily in Belize, 24 cents of every dollar, 24% of every dollar that goes into a bank in Belize must stay liquid, at least 24%. And so what it does is it really gives stability and strengths to the banks in Belize, because at least a quarter, and usually in Key Bank's case, it's about a third of all the money in the bank is liquid. So it's highly accessible, right? So it gives strength to the banking system. Very, very important. Again, we talked about Commonwealth. We talked about the reef. These are some of the reasons that Belize has become a very, very popular banking and business destination. Privacy. Look, again, it's not about hiding your money. It's about doing things legally and properly, but privacy is important. And to the extent we can enhance our privacy, we should do that. Stability. We talked about liquidity. That's very, very important. Protection, right? The banking laws in Belize, it's a very highly regulated banking environment. Very, very important. And then the Central Bank of Belize does those regulation. Asset protection, another aspect of Belize's offshore legislation. Again, the idea that if you set up a trust, it's your money, right? Asset protection is about protecting what you already have. We're going to talk about how to maybe make some more money with some investments in later on in this presentation. But what you already have is at risk. People can sue you. You can lose it through many, divorce and other ways that you can lose assets. Asset protection is really about keeping what you have. And so with the proper legislation in place, and Belize, again, was very, very smart about going out and taking the best elements of different laws and putting it together to create something unique in the marketplace. So if you have assets that you want to protect, high net worth individuals, certainly, but also people who are targets, physicians are many times, we talk about ambulance chasers, right? And so physicians tend to be targets. So there are certain professions and certain types of amounts of assets that deserve protection. And if you're looking at overseas asset protection, Belize would certainly be a country that you would want to consider, specifically because of the strength of their legislation. That's the key, the strength of their legislation. Key Bank has won incredible awards. This is our chairman, Joel Nagel. He is an attorney. He's also an asset protection attorney. So if you ever are looking for asset protection, I would certainly recommend Joel. He, full disclosure, again, he takes care of my trust and my asset protection. He does for many, many people. But the bank has been very successful over the 20 years, winning numerous awards throughout the region as being one of the best banks in the region, one of the best private banks. And then all the different services that the bank can provide. Think about this. If you believe in just general asset protection, and part of your asset protection plan is diversification of currencies, right? If you went to Wells Fargo and said, "Hey, I'd like to open an account in Swiss francs, or I'd like to open an account in British pounds or yen," pick the currency. They really don't offer that service to you. They might offer it to very, very high net worth individuals through one of their brokerage offices, but that's not really holding the currency. It's not really having an account in that currency. One of the nice things about Key Bank is you can open an account in pesos. You can open an account in yen or Swiss francs or pounds or euros or Canadian dollars, right? So you have the ability to have currencies, different currencies, which gives you diversification of one asset, which is your liquid wealth, something to consider. The real reason we started the bank, and even today, that the main business of the bank is providing mortgage lending. It's lending to people who are buying homes, condos, properties in Belize and throughout the region. And this is, again, some very different, something very unique. Not many banks in the region offer it, and almost no banks in the US will finance based on collateral overseas. I'm told there are a few. I have yet to see it really in writing to know that it's true. But at the end of the day, here's a bank that if you're buying a property in Belize, you can get financing. Or if you're looking at a property in Costa Rica, they can help you finance that property as well. So being able to offer financing services to North Americans in the region, a very, very unique proposition and something that's in demand in the marketplace. So now we're going to talk about Belize specifically as a country, and we're just going to end with a couple investment ideas, lifestyle ideas that really might be something you'd want to consider and request a little bit more information. But the key point here is, why own in Belize? But far more important, why right now? Why right now? Well, this is the answer. First trip to Belize, 1993. Ambergris Caye. The tallest building was 2 stories. Every street was sand, and the population of the island was 2,000, 2,500 people. If you look at this path of progress chart, Belize would have been way down at the bottom on the left. Very few people had heard of it. If you were a diver, if you were a fly fisherman, if you were a serious reef fisherman, you probably had heard of Belize. You might or might not have been there. Right? It was a super niche market. And you just didn't have families, almost no families, very few women. It was mostly, groups of men coming down to dive and fish. That was the marketplace. Well, this path of progress is really based on a concept that I came up with, which is called popularity. I call this actually the popularity chart. Here's how I came up with the countries and put them on here. I said to myself, if somebody from Winnipeg, Canada, or Naples, Florida, or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, gets married this Saturday, coming up, Saturday they get married. Where are they going on their honeymoon on Monday? Right? Well, probably a lot of them going to the Cayman Islands, Cancun, Mexico, ton of them going to Costa Rica, right? That's where they're going on their honeymoons. Not very many going to Honduras, Nicaragua, or El Salvador. They're just not, right? It's not as popular. And if you look at the price of real estate in very popular places, Cayman Islands, Cancun, Costa Rica, the price of real estate is pretty high, right? But there's high occupancy. You have people taking their honeymoons, so you also have people taking their vacations. So you have lots of airlift, you have lots of customers, you have lots of occupancy. So from an investment standpoint and from a price of land standpoint, prices are higher, but occupancy is higher. Cash flow is better. Countries like Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, not very popular. Not many people going on their honeymoons, not many people taking their vacations there. So you have lower priced land, lower priced real estate, and you also have less people coming, so you get less cash flow. The country of Belize over the last 25, 30 years has gone from a niche market that almost nobody'd heard of to now they're giving away free weeks in Belize on Wheel of Fortune, the game show, right? And what really drove that more than anything else was about 15 years ago, the cruise ships started coming to Belize. And I can remember being part of the Belize Hotel Association. I was a member of that, and the Belize Tourism Industry Association. And there were arguments back then, even maybe going back 17 or 18 years when the cruise ships started to court Belize and say, hey, we want to come here. I remember the Hotel Association is specifically saying, well, we don't want that because they get off the cruise ship, they run around, they get back on the cruise ship. How does that benefit the hotels? And one other hotelier and I really were the voice of, hold on, time out. Like, you're right. There's 5,000 people getting off the cruise ship today, or 3 cruise ships, and there's 15,000 people. None of them benefit your hotel in any direct way, right? They're going to go cave tubing, they're going to go diving and snorkeling or taking tours. They're going to eat in some restaurants, but they're not coming to spend the night in your hotel. We get that. But those same people, some percentage of that 5, 10, 15,000 people a day are going to get off and go, wow, this place is awesome. We got to come back here. Well, when they come back, a lot of them come back for a week. They come on vacation. And so what has happened, and it also is the notoriety. People start to hear about it, right? Now more and more people, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 people a day actually know where Belize is. They've been there, right? So over the last, what's that? Maybe 15 years since the cruise ship started coming, Belize went from this little niche market to pretty well known and pretty popular, right? But not nearly as popular as Costa Rica, Cancun, the Caymans, Bahamas. And so it's moved up this popularity curve, right? But the type of product and the pricing on product is kind of lagging behind this popularity. It's kind of a chicken and an egg thing. We've got some stats coming up to show this in a minute. But why Belize right now? Belize is in the sweet spot of the curve. I've watched many of these countries go from obscurity to where they are today. And, we're watching sort of the next set kind of run this same curve, right? This is what's called putting yourself in the path of progress, or what I affectionately call time machine investing, right? And it's not always about investing. It can also be about lifestyle, right? If you say, I want dry cleaning, I want 5-star dining, I want a Michelin restaurant, you know what? You probably need to be in the Cayman Islands. You need to be at the pinnacle of path of progress, or Bermuda, right? Because I don't think there is dry cleaning, and not on Ambergris Caye anyway, right? Not that you need it, but I'm just saying, there are certain lifestyle elements that you would say, I want these things. Well, they're going to be much higher on the path of progress. On the other hand, you might say, well, I don't need those things. I'm a pretty low maintenance person. I can enjoy just kicking back in a hammock with my shoes off and, having a beer at a beach bar and, eating some great seafood, some ceviche or whatever. Well, you know what? Belize is probably just spot on for you from a lifestyle standpoint. So both lifestyle and investment have elements of truth in this chart. But for investors, I just want to say, this is time machine investing. If we know what happened in the Cayman Islands, Cancun, Costa Rica, and Panama, and we saw kind of what happened next, and this path, right? Because we got to watch that, then we can come back to Belize and we can say, oh, well, this is what happened next in those 4 countries. We got to say probably, it's probably going to happen in Belize next. and then thing after that, and the thing after that. We don't get time machine opportunities very often, but this is certainly one of them. And Belize is in the sweet spot of this curve. Belize is a country, again, about the size of Vermont, New Hampshire, the little island of Ambergris Caye. That's the cutout there. You can see the reef just running right along the edge of it. And the reef system runs the whole way down the country. You can kind of see the shallow water between the coast and the out. But here's the amazing thing. While Belize is a thing, right? It's a country, right? We have to start to really thin slice to understand where the opportunities are. 70% of all the tourism revenue comes from that little island of Ambergris Caye. So while we say Belize is the sweet spot of the curve, it is, right? If you're looking for an investment, right, then actually it's not Belize, it's Ambergris Caye, Belize. It's the thin slicing of the market that says where on the curve is it? And Ambergris Caye for the country of Belize is the location that generates 70% of all the tourism revenue. So if you're thinking about an investment that would serve honeymooners, vacationers, you want to be where they're going, which is Ambergris Caye. On the other hand, if you say, this is also important, you're a lifestyle person, you know what? That's great. But I'm not investing. I'm buying a home, right? I'm buying a property. You might want to be in the mountains of Belize, right? You might want to be in a different beach location where you're not getting the massive tourism. Again, understanding these kinds of things cuts both ways, right? Or you might say, well, look, I am looking for a place. I want to be where the action is. I'm going to enjoy this place, 3, 4, 5 weeks a year. I'm going to rent it when I'm not there. And someday, in 10 years from now, I'm going to retire to it, right? But I want to be where the action is. Well, that's Ambergris Caye. So the data gives us the ability to position ourselves as lifestyle owners or investors to where we need to be to achieve the goal that we want. Ambergris Caye, some pictures from Ambergris, just spectacular water destination. That's what Ambergris Caye is. It's a water destination. One of the things that I like best about Ambergris Caye is that user reviews, TripAdvisor, right? These are reviews. They're not editorial. Nobody's paying for this. They come on after they've been to the island and they say what they like or don't like about a destination. Well, Ambergris Caye, #1, top 10 destination in Central America on TripAdvisor. These are people who have been there, who have no reason to say anything at all, positive or negative, but they want to say something about Ambergris Caye. Top 10, TripAdvisor, user reviews, powerful, powerful testimonial. And these are the reasons people are coming. Fly fishing, deep sea fishing, diving, snorkeling, where you really do see this stuff when you go snorkeling. It's amazing. Sea kayaking, stand-up paddle boarding, all of these activities on the island are just fantastic. And we talked about more and more people coming, but here it is, over a 12-year period, 14%, almost 15% tourism growth year over year. And we have to take into effect COVID, right? Of course. So look at these numbers. Back in, 10 was the first year, right? Year 10, 242,000 overnight arrivals, got up to about a little over 500,000, right? And then COVID hit and it dropped way back down. This year, 2023, we're on track to be more than 500,000. So we're on track to beat the pre-COVID year of 19 in Belize. So yes, it dropped, everywhere dropped, but we're on a very steep recovery back to pre-COVID numbers. So good stuff happening. Earlier, I promised a statistic, which is absolutely incredible. This to me is a fascinating statistic. So we've got the growth of the room revenue. You can see right up to COVID there at 503. But what you see is the total room count flat. So you have more and more and more people coming for overnight lodging, and you have the amount of rooms actually declining slightly in that last year, but let's just call it flat. And this was that chicken and an egg thing that we talked about, right? So people have to invest, and it takes 2 to 3 years from the time you plan a project, say 3 years from the time you start thinking about a project to you can actually turn it on. And so there's this incredible lag in the marketplace for rooms, for availability for people to stay. That's one side of it. The other side of it is something also really, really important. And that is the type of consumer who comes to a mainstream destination. Back when Belize was just diving and fishing, and that's all it was, right? People came and they stayed in whatever hotel it was. Didn't matter. They weren't there for the hotel experience. They were there to be underwater. They wanted as many tanks on their back every day as they could get. They wanted as much time out on the flats fly fishing as they could possibly get. They didn't care about the hotel. But a cruise ship customer is a very different customer. They get off, they're a cruise ship customer, they get off for a day, they say to themselves, gosh, we got to come back here sometime. And 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years later, they're like, yeah, where do you want to go this year? You know, that Belize, that was a really cool place. So they go online. They actually are the kind of customer who wants a brand. A cruise ship customer is a brand preference customer. And so when they look at Ambergris Caye and they say, all right, so let's go to Ambergris Caye. We're water people. We want to snorkel and dive and bump, whatever. And so they look up brands. There is a hole in the marketplace, a giant hole in the marketplace. There is a Curio by Hilton open. There's an Autograph by Marriott open. And there's a Best Western open on the island. That's it. There are 3 brands open on the island today. We own the Best Western franchise. We also have the 4th branded product under construction right now, which is a Marriott Resort and Residences property. So when we complete that in the summer of 25, there will be 4 branded properties on the island of Ambergris Caye. Overnight arrivals skyrocketing. Room count fairly flat. Branded product almost non-existent. This is the hole in the marketplace that's a powerful opportunity for folks looking to make a time machine investment. Again, looking at the marketplace, Airbnb rental market ratings, A+ coming out of Ambergris. Other places doing pretty well. I mean, Tulum, right? Tamarindo, whatever, A-, that's nice. Turks, Panama, you know, they're all solid. Ambergris Caye, A+. Let's look at pricing. We talked about the pricing on that curve, right? Places, this happens to be the Bahamas. This is Paradise Island. It's a Marriott property, 1 bedroom, 2 bath, you know, $1 million, $999, right? $1 million. Same thing on Ambergris Caye, 500,000, half price, right? This is what that popularity curve translates into in the form of price, right? And it's not that the cost of construction is very much different. It's the land. The land is the major differential, right? Oceanfront property in the Bahamas is astronomically expensive. Oceanfront property in Belize is relatively inexpensive. And so you end up with a oceanfront Marriott residence property for $500,000 instead of $1 million. So very, very important to understand that particular aspect of the popularity curve, time machine investing, and where we get some competitive advantage in the marketplace. This is our Best Western. It's the Bayman Gardens. We developed it as a condo hotel many, many years ago. We have 70 residences that are up and part of a rental program. The Best Western is the heads on beds. We operate the business ourselves. And again, it's there, it's real. And residences start at $159,000. So these types of properties serve a middle-class client, right? It's off the water. It's 3 blocks off the water. This is a middle-class client who says, I've got $150, $175 a night that I want to spend on my lodging. Yes, I'm not directly looking at the ocean when I wake up in the morning, but you know, for a third the money, you know, I'll stay 3 blocks off the water and we'll go up and we'll go to the beach bar at night and we'll watch the sunset, right? And we'll dance in the sand and under the stars till, you know, 10 o'clock at night. And then we'll walk our 3 blocks back to our, you know, beautiful condo hotel and spend the night, right? This is the value traveler. And the Best Western on Ambergris Caye is the only branded product off the water for a value traveler. Again, serving that consumer who came on a cruise ship many years ago, who's looking for certainty. What does a brand really provide? It provides certainty. You're going to get a bottle of water. You're going to get a coffee maker that works. You're going to get fast internet. You're going to get excellent check-in, check-out service, right? This is what the consumer who's a mainstream traveler wants. They want predictability. They want certainty. And so for $150, $175 a night, they can have that in San Pedro, 3 blocks off the Caribbean in a Best Western property. And for you, in fact, we have some folks that live in their condominiums. These are residences. they live in them full time, and they have all the advantages of living in a wonderful resort community, right? But investors also have the opportunity to own these, put them in the rental program, and let Best Western do what they do best, which is put heads on beds and deliver certainty to the marketplace for that middle-class traveler. And then the Marriott that we have under construction right now, Marriott Resort and Residences. This was the original site, tore everything out, the rendering of what's coming, great groundbreaking ceremony we had a little while ago, site prep, putting in the piles. I need to update the slides from March. We actually have the foundation now tied. They'll be pouring the foundation at the end of this month. So the initial slab. So this project is under construction. This is a oceanfront Marriott, as you see, 202 keys, resort and residences. And it's really important for you to hear this. Our company, ECI, which is our development company, we will keep at least 60% of the 202 keys. So at least 130 of those residences we are going to retain as the corporate entity. Why do we want to retain them? Because there's going to be great cash flow. We're looking at between $2.5 and $3 million a year of net cash flow to our corporation because we're going to hold on to those residences, right? This is why we're doing it. We are offering up to 70 of the residences for sale, for private ownership, right? So 70 folks can actually own a residence alongside us. Here's the really cool thing, and it's a question that I'm going to ask now because someone may or may not ask it. Well, if you're keeping 130 and you're selling 70, why wouldn't you just book all your 130 and keep the 70 empty, right? Or whatever the occupancy is. Simple answer. One, Marriott is the heads on beds, and we have a third-party independent operator called Highgate. You can look them up. They operate hundreds of hotels around the United States and the Caribbean. They're the professional operator authorized by Marriott to do that. Marriott cares about one thing, heads on beds, guest experience, right? The operator cares about just taking care of clients. So when somebody checks into that hotel, they're going to go into whatever room is the best fit for the client. And here's the beautiful thing, we're selling 70 of the residences. Folks that come today can actually cherry pick the best and most likely to be requested. Bottom floor, people with kids. Top floor, older folks that just want to hang out on the balcony and have the $1 million view, right? And so the 70 that we actually are offering for private ownership actually stand a much greater chance to be rented more often than the 130 that are left over in the end, because we don't determine where the rental is. The only thing that determines where the rental is customer request. Hey, we'd like a top floor. Hey, we'd like a bottom floor. We got kids. We don't run up and down the elevator, right? With our kids in our wet bathing suit. So neat opportunity for folks. We do have some numbers. These are our numbers, right? Great return on investment, which is why we are going to keep 130, at least 130 of those residences. And before we talked about comparative pricing between the Bahamas and Belize, an equal to equal unit, $1 million and $500,000, $499. Actually, residences, oceanfront residences in the Marriott start at $349 for a studio. So for $350,000, you can have a beautiful oceanfront Marriott residence that looks out on the Belize Barrier Reef. It will absolutely be a spectacular project. It's under construction, keys handed to folks in the summer of 2025. So that's it for the formal presentation. We do have this resource. It's the Belize Handbook. It's a great resource. It talks about everything from water taxi schedules, the local airlines, Tropic Air, Maya Air. It lists all their routes and the rates. Annually, we update the rates. They don't change that much. Restaurants throughout the country, hotels throughout the country. Just an incredible resource. Holidays, economic information, tax information. I think there's some stuff on residency in there as well. So folks who decide they want to own a property in Belize and become a resident, right? They're gonna live in it, right? So they want to be able to stay there legally, right? So how do you get a residency, whether it's the QRP, the qualified retired person, or the investor residency? The investor residency is something fairly new. I guess it's about 1.5 years old at this point. Investments of $250,000 or more qualify you for an investor residency. It's a permanent residency. And in 5 years, it can actually lead to citizenship. So for folks looking at any of the Marriott residences, they're all over 250. So you would qualify for a residency in Belize. If you were looking at something in the gardens, two of the studios, for example, would put you at a little over 300, which would again qualify you for the residency program. So this Belize handbook has information about the residencies, restaurants, hotels, all the general information that you would want to know if you're thinking about Belize as either a lifestyle destination, a vacation property destination, and or an investment property destination. So please, it's easy to get info@ecidevelopment.com. Just write Belize handbook in the subject line, and we'll get that over to you. So I think that's it. Angie, it's it for prepared anyway. Angie, if you want to look at and see if we have some questions, I'd love to entertain some questions and see if we can help some folks dig a little deeper and maybe plan a trip. By the way, I don't think it was in here, but we have a discovery tour coming up. The discovery tour is, Angie, if I get this wrong, you can correct me. I think it's the June 23rd to the 25th. It's a Friday to Monday or Friday to Sunday with like an add-on day or something. And is that right, Angie?
Yep. It's the 23rd through the 25th, and then you can add an extra day on to the 26th.
That's right. For $100, you can add one more day, right? And
yep.
Yeah, right. And so what a lot of people are doing is they're coming in on Friday, they're adding that extra day, and on Monday, they're actually headed over to the jungle for a couple of days too. So you can kind of really get the best of both worlds. Come out to the island for, you get out on Friday evening, we'll have fun, we'll have a cocktail party, and we do some neat things. We tour around the island and we go to Secret Beach, and we just do a snorkel trip and just have fun together. And then on Monday, when you get up, you have breakfast, hop on a little hopper flight over to the mainland and go out to the jungle for a few days and maybe go see some Mayan ruins, but absolutely go cave tubing. That is such a must. Anyway, but yeah, we'd love for you to take a look at that. Just, add that to your question in the email if you want information about the discovery tour in just a few weeks at the end of June.
Okay, we do have a few questions.
Okay.
So this one is, we've looked at properties that provide seller financing. However, many require a balloon payment at the end of 5 years or so. What is the typical length of a loan for your mortgage loans?
That's a great question. And so there are some factors in there. The longer the term, the higher the rate, right? Because there's rate risk over time. So a lot of times with the balloon, what happens is that they can get the rate down because they know that they only have to guarantee that rate for 3 years, 5 years, whatever. So Key Bank will provide longer terms. They can actually take all the way out to a 10-year term. They can do up to a 30-year amortization, which would mean there would be a balloon payment in 10 years. 10 is about the longest I've seen anybody offer a loan in Belize on a straight term basis.
Okay, here's another one. What percentage of the purchase price would you estimate someone should have to invest?
Well, that's a good question. I'm a big fan, and I know this kind of smacks in the face of sort of modern real estate investment theory. I'm a big fan of paying 100% cash for a property. I think leverage, especially overseas, it's expensive. You're not gonna get the same kinds of free money. I mean, it's not free money in the U.S. anymore now that we're 7% or whatever we are in the States, right? But it used to be fairly free money, especially if interest rates were at 3-4 and inflation was at 4-5, right? It was truly free money. It's not free money here in the U.S. anymore. But what I have seen and what we recommend as a company is that people put as much down as possible, get as heavily on the cash side as possible, because then what you're really talking about is a true cash on cash return without that mortgage payment, that mortgage obligation. I know that definitely flies in the face of what most real estate investors think about in the US, because in the US, it actually makes a lot of sense to borrow money. It really does. I understand it. Overseas, it actually makes more sense to be heavier on the cash side so that you really are seeing a true cash on cash return. and you own the product. There's no mortgage obligation on the backside. The thing that we see a lot, right? People have these big portfolios in the US of, dozens of properties, hundreds of properties, pick the number, right? I mean, and it can be any number. Some small percentage of anybody's portfolio, my personal opinion, should be diversified outside your home country, right? I mean, really. And if you're a real estate investor or a hard asset investor, owning a piece of real estate outside your home country is just simply wise and prudent, right? Because, if you have all your eggs in one basket, the home country, and anything happens, all your eggs are in one basket. So take a couple little eggs, not many, and have a whole new basket, right? Some small percentage of your portfolio, have it in a totally different basket outside your home country. That really is where we see most of the real estate investors, coming to a country like Belize, not just Belize, but today Belize, and acquiring an asset or two or three so that they have that diversification, that hard asset overseas, but largely it's in a cash basis, right? They're paying for it up front. They're not leveraging that investment.
Okay, so let's see. We have time for a couple more. Here's another one. How close to the beach are the Best Western condos?
They're about 3.5 blocks. So I'm going to say, what's that, about 300 yards, something like that.
Okay. And is the 159K starting rate for the one bedroom or studio rooms?
That would be for the studios.
Okay. And then the last question on that is, can you share the total cost and financing terms for those?
We can. We can actually provide all of that to you very specifically. Each floor has a little bit of a different price. Different residences have different prices. The amount of financing, the term, all those kinds of things that we talked about a moment ago make it a little hard to do generally. But the specific answer is yes, we can provide all of that information. Please just shoot us a note, and we'll have one of our property consultants get back to you with a very specific answer to that question for your specific circumstances. But happy to do that. Absolutely.
Okay, and one more question. Are they friendly to foreign investors?
Belize is extremely friendly to foreign investors. The country really has hung its hat on agriculture has always been there, right? So they always had agriculture sort of foundational industry, but the creation of this offshore legislation, the banking, financial services legislation, that was on purpose. That was creating from nothing, and so they understand that they have to be very, very attractive in the marketplace. Capital goes where it's treated best, right? Money is very fluid. And so we can invest in Belize, or we can invest in the Cayman Islands, or we can invest in Thailand, right? Money just moves around the world. It's just digits, right? And so Belize very clearly understands that it must treat foreign investors very, very well. And it does. You've got a couple different organizations, the Belize Tourist Board on the tourism side, a lot of support and help there. And then you've got Bell Trade, which is really sort of their Belize's investment promotion division. That's a rough description of it, but their mandate is to coordinate and work with foreign investors who want to bring in different types of investment, not just tourism. It could be agriculture, it could be industry, it could be call centers, many types of investments in the country that make sense in a country like Belize. So yeah, we've worked there now for 29 years and have been very, very happy with the treatment that we've received in the country regarding foreign investment.
Okay, one more. This is the last one.
All right.
Any other ones we will have the property consultants reach out to if we haven't answered your questions yet. So the last one is your bank part of SWIFT?
Well, that's a good question. SWIFT has to do with the different correspondence. And if you would please send an email to the info@ecidevelopment.com, what I will do is have somebody at the bank answer that question specifically for you. I believe it is, but I'm not 100% sure. So if you send me the question, I will get you the exact answer. So please, I'll look for that. And yeah, we'll find out. I'll find out too. So, yeah.
Okay, great. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Mike, do you have any closing words?
Well, no, again, yeah, Angie, you said it. Thank you everybody for taking time out of your day to be a part of the webinar. We look forward to hearing from you. And Angie, thank you for helping to pull this thing together and make it happen. Really appreciate your support there.
No problem.
All right.
All right, everybody, have a great day.
Bye
Thank
now.
you. Bye-bye.